Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. So yesterday we started the 6th juz, and today we just completed the 6th juz. So today I want us to reflect on 2 ayat. The first ayah is the first ayah of the 6th juz, and the second ayah is the last ayah of the 6th juz. So the first and the last. I found them to be some important lessons, so I just chose them. They are not any other way related. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا يحب الله الجهر بالسوء من القول إلا من ظلم وكان الله سميعا عليما إن تبدوا خيرا أو تخفوه أو تعفوا عن سوء فإن الله كان عفوا قديرا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like negative thoughts to be voiced. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like for negative talk to be spoken except by those who have been wronged. Except by those who have been wronged. Allah is all hearing, all knowing. Whether you reveal or conceal a good or pardon an evil, surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ever pardoning, most capable. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that He does not like for a person to speak ill of someone except for the one who has been oppressed. The one who has been oppressed has the right to speak against the oppressor in certain situations. So the Prophet ﷺ told us, of course we all know that ghiba or backbiting is not allowed. But sometimes some people who are oppressors or abusers, they use this as a way to clamp down and control their victim. And they say, if you speak against me, you will be backbiting. If you go and complain about me, you will be speaking ill of your family member. And as a result, a person is afraid because they're basically using spirituality to manipulate a person. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah does not like for someone to speak ill except for the one who has been oppressed. If someone is the victim of oppression, then they do have the right to speak out. They do have the right to speak out. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whether you reveal or conceal, in tubdu khayran aw tukhfuhu aw ta'fu an su, or you pardon an evil, surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ever pardoning, most capable. Meaning, you don't always have to choose necessarily to expose someone. If you feel like the situation can be handled in a different way, that is something that could be done as well. So I wanted to share with you, based on the evidences, the scholars have deduced that there are 6 cases. There are 6 cases in which it is allowed for a person to backbite. Other than that, we're not supposed to engage in speaking bad about someone behind their back. Number 1 is to complain to authorities to explain what this person has done to me. For example, a person goes to a judge, they have to testify clear details of exactly what has happened so that the person can be held to accountability. Because of course, if you say, oh, you're backbiting against this person, he's not here, and you're telling the judge what happened, of course, the oppressors will always get away. Number 2 is to identify a criminal or someone known by a certain name that may be negative. So for example, let's say that there's a certain person who's a bad character, and this person is known as the one-eyed man. Okay, now the one-eyed man might be a slight slur of a type, which is you're mentioning that person in a negative way. But if that's how this person is known by everyone, or the shorty guy or something, if there's a specific name that has become famous for this person, then you can use that in order to identify them when it needs to be done. Number 3 is to warn someone in case of marriage or business. Marriage or business, and business is like a marriage and marriage is like a business, right? So if someone is considering someone to get married to, and you know that this person has some problems that will affect their relationship, and you are consulted on this matter, then you are allowed to give facts but not opinion. You're allowed to give facts but not opinion. One of the sahabiyat came to the Prophet ﷺ, and she said to the Prophet ﷺ that, Ya Rasulullah, these 2 men have proposed to me. So the Prophet ﷺ told her that such and such person is a stingy man, and the other one beats his woman. So he's saying this is the fact. Now, do you still want to marry him? It's up to you. But if I know a fact and you are about to get involved in this relationship, same way, if you have done business with someone and someone comes and says, hey, I'm doing a background check. You know, think about if somebody calls you for a background check over about someone that you have worked with, and they say, we want to know such and such information about this person. In this case, not only you're allowed to backbite, but you are not supposed to hide the truth, but tell the truth, because that may allow the next relationship to be better, because other people, if they choose to get into it, they will know what they're getting into. Also, when the person is committing evil openly, so if someone is doing something inappropriate and they're posting pictures on Instagram and Facebook and everything like that, then there's nothing hidden about this person in the first place. Also, when advice is sought, so they say that there are two people that you never hide anything from: your doctor and your lawyer. Okay? Because if you want the doctor to treat you properly, you need to tell them exactly what's going on with you, even the embarrassing details. With your lawyer, you need to tell them everything, whatever happened, so that they can figure out what's a good defense for you. I would say if you're asking for advice from an imam, you need to not tell everything, but you need to tell as much as has happened. So sometimes a person comes to me and says, you know what, my wife is giving me a real hard time. I'm like, okay. And then they talk. After 35 minutes, and they say, well, I did beat her once and I spent a few nights in jail. I was like, brother, maybe you should have started off with that. So, you're basically not able to get a full picture on advice, to get advice properly, if you're not giving the full picture in order for someone to tell you. Lastly, when one is asking for help in removing an evil. So for example, I'm being oppressed, and the person who is oppressing me is a friend of yours. So I feel that perhaps you can help me by stopping your friend, that you have power over him, or maybe he's your brother, maybe he's your son. So I go to you saying, look, help me against this person who you have some influence over, because he is or she is oppressing me. So these are the cases in which it is allowed for a person to speak ill against someone. Other than that, we should avoid speaking ill about people. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us if we have ever done so. If we do speak ill about people behind their back, we are giving them our good deeds, and they will be able to take that from us on the Day of Judgment. Now, last ayah I will mention quickly, and inshallah we'll finish, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَتَجِدَنَّ أَشَدَّ النَّاسِ عَدَاوَةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الْيَهُودَ وَالَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا وَلَتَجِدَنَّ أَقْرَبَهُمْ مَوَدَّةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّا نَصَارَى ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّ مِنْهُمْ قِسِّيسِينَ وَرُهْبَانًا وَأَنَّهُمْ لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you will surely find the most bitter towards the believers to be two groups of people. So two groups of people have the most enmity towards the Muslims, towards the believers. Who are these two groups? The Yahud and the Mushrikeen. And he says, and you will find the Christians, those who call themselves Christians, you will find them to be more gracious, or most gracious, compared to the other two groups. If you look at the world today, the two biggest, you could say, forces against Islam, openly and behind the scenes, that are rising and giving problem to Muslims all across the world, are exactly the two groups that Allah has spoken about. If you think about the rise of RSS in India, and the extremist Hindu ideology, and how they're using laws. You think about in Gaza, there are 2 million Muslims, right? 2 million or so. In India, there are 220 million Muslims. And those 220 million Muslims are basically being prepped for genocide. They are being prepped for genocide with the full authority and support of the government. And as you know, that recently there was a famous mosque called the Babri Mosque. They destroyed that and they built a magnificent temple on it. And they had the world's biggest opening ceremony, and all of India's royalty and celebrity was present there to celebrate that, which shows you that there is not an open boycott of the oppression that's taking place. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our brothers and sisters in Palestine, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our brothers and sisters in India and elsewhere in the world. But this is something that Allah teaches us, that beware what the world situation is. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.